I have discovered that the evolution of society is not determined by a single law, but by the interaction of two fundamental laws. The first is the law of social resource production system evolution. Simply put, this law states that social resource production is accomplished through human physical labor and the assistance of tools. However, as everyone knows, the efficiency of human physical labor cannot be significantly improved over the long course of social evolution. In contrast, the efficiency of tools can achieve exponential growth. This inevitably leads to a result. Substantial increases in the efficiency of social resource production are achieved through the continuous optimization and efficiency improvement of production tools. Essentially, it is the continuous increase in the degree of tool autonomy. Alright, the second law is the law of civilizational operation. The operation of society follows a fundamental pattern. Social culture determines the rules for the distribution of social resources. The implementation of these distribution rules results in the social economy, which is essentially the amount of resources each individual possesses. This individual resource possession, in turn, determines the culture of the social individuals. The basic logic of this law is that an individual's thoughts determine their actions. Their actions determine the results they obtain, and these results, in turn, influence their subsequent actions. Therefore, this law is a unidirectional, irreversible, infinite cycle. These two laws interact with each other. The continuous improvement of tool efficiency leads to the constant growth of social resource production efficiency. This situation determines the upper limit of resources that society can produce. However, these resources are ultimately distributed through the resource distribution rules within the law of civilizational operation, with the outcome being the amount of resources individuals possess. If the distribution outcome is good, social supply and demand can remain stable, or even see demand exceeding supply, thus enabling socio-economic development. If distribution is poor, social supply will fall short of social demand, causing social supply to shrink, which manifests as an economic recession. Therefore, within these dual core laws, the law of social resource production system evolution determines the upper limit of social resource production, while the law of civilizational operation determines the extent to which these resources can be transformed into the well-being of the people. For example, many countries like to use per capita income in their economic data. From the perspective of the dual core laws, per capita income is a classic performance indicator of the social resource production system. It represents the maximum amount of resources each individual in society could potentially receive if the social resource distribution rules were perfectly implemented. However, most people do not identify with this average figure, because it far exceeds their actual personal income, leading to a severe sense of disparity. The essence of this sense of disparity is the inefficient distribution caused by the social resource distribution rules, resulting in a severe gap between rich and poor. This outcome is determined jointly by the dual core laws. The more severe this sense of disparity, the greater the wealth gap, and the more failed the social governance. If you can think deeply about these two laws, you will find that they are both very objective, independent of human will. Their interaction can explain all phenomena of prosperity and decline in human civilization. So, how can we use these laws to solve the problem of economic recession? This brings us back to the most fundamental concept mentioned when discussing the economy: the balance between supply and demand. An economic recession is nothing more than social supply exceeding social demand. Therefore, the solution is simply to make social demand exceed social supply again. Let's take an example. Suppose when the market supply and demand are balanced, society produces 100 units of resources, and the people happen to have 100 units of resources to trade. So the economy is stable. However, due to the influence of the law of social resource production system evolution, the efficiency of tools improves, increasing social resource production efficiency by 50% to 150 units. Now, the people, with their 100 units of resources, cannot buy all these goods, and an economic crisis emerges. How to solve it? The method is to collect at least 25 units of additional resources from the production side and distribute them unconditionally to each member of society. At this point, the people have at least 125 units of resources, while the resources on the production side drop to less than 125 units. Social demand will then exceed social supply, and the economy will rebalance. From the market's perspective, this method essentially means the market purchases the consuming power of the people. It is the only option to prevent its own collapse. Therefore, the injection of this purchasing power is no longer a moral choice, but a technical necessity for maintaining the functioning of society. Based on this case, we can derive a formula for dealing with economic crises. Let the total amount of resources obtained by the people through labor be A, and the total amount of social resource production be B. Then, the minimum amount of social resource distribution must be greater than B minus A divided by 2. This amount of resource distribution must also have an upper limit. Distributing resources to the people cannot come at the expense of the reproductive capacity of the social resource production system, such as the maintenance and updating of equipment. It also cannot undermine the costs of maintaining the market trading environment, like government expenditure and national defense spending. These expenses can be collectively termed social operating costs. Assuming we set this total cost for maintaining social operation as C, we can derive the maximum upper limit of resources available for social distribution, which is B minus A minus C. Therefore, we can delineate the range for unconditional social resource distribution, setting the distribution quantity as X. Then X must satisfy B minus A divided by T less than 2, X less than 2, B minus A minus C. I call this formula the safe distribution corridor. It can explain why societies with a consensus on distribution according to work experience economic crises, and why certain high welfare states decline. Moreover, this formula can also be used to delineate the historical stages of social development. The basic idea is this. Both B minus A divided by 2 and B minus A minus C can be plotted as curves on a timeline. From these curves, we can see that the distribution quantity X has not always existed. It only becomes feasible when the value B has developed to a high enough level, so that B minus A divided by T stably exceeds B minus A minus C. In the early stages of social development, Xi does not exist. Therefore, based on these curves, we can divide the stages of social development into 5 historical periods. Age of ignorance, B minus A minus C is consistently negative. The corridor does not exist. Society cannot afford any form of unconditional distribution. Age of struggle, B minus A minus C becomes positive, but generally B minus A divided by 2 greater than B minus A minus C. The corridor width is mostly negative, occasionally positive. Society has a meager surplus, but not enough to simultaneously meet the lower distribution limit and system operating costs. Age of decision, B minus A minus C greater than B minus A divided by 2. The corridor width becomes positive and continues to expand. However, cultural cognition and distribution rules remain locked in the old paradigm. X is consistently below the lower bound, leading to recurring economic crises. Age of transition, society proactively establishes a system to extract X from the net surplus, and X stabilizes within the corridor center. People are partially freed from forced labor, experiencing intergenerational expansion of free choice. Age of freedom, B is immensely abundant. eBay approaches 0, and the corridor becomes so wide as to have no constraining meaning. Needs-based distribution becomes a reality. This set of historical stages, derived from mathematical formulas, differs from traditional historical periodization. It is continuous, measurable, predictable, and can provide effective guidance for the future development of society. Everyone is welcome to compare and contemplate this for themselves. Due to space limitations, this video will stop here. This content originates from a new sociological theory I have developed, called Civilization, Its Laws, Diagnosis, and Engineering. This book is available on Amazon and can also be read and downloaded on Kindle. I will continue to make videos explaining how to widen the safe distribution corridor, how to systematically reduce social operating costs, and how to design the future resource architecture of society. You are welcome to follow along. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments section, and I will answer them one by one.